So ACT is Accelerating Clinical Trials Consortium Canada, and ACT brings together 11 clinical trial units, which are institutions that have the infrastructure and personnel to conduct randomized controlled trials. There are 11 geographically located across the country. We also have 28 networks of researchers. Those researchers can focus on disease states like diabetes or patient populations like critical care or interventions like heart valve replacement. And then across these networks, we have groups that are cross-cutting enablers, which are trying to address the issues that sort of slow down trials in Canada and create bottlenecks, and we want to overcome that to make more efficient trials. And so that's what the sort of structure of ACT is. ACT is trying to really change the landscape so that we can have much more efficient trials in Canada, but also make sure that there's a democratization of trials so that Canadians across the country have access to participate in trials that are relevant to their own health. We also are making a big investment into helping to advance and grow Canadian biotechnology. I think it became very evident during COVID that we need to make sure that we have a really strong biotechnology, industry in Canada. We have to do our part. A lot of times, small biotechnology companies don't have the funds available to actually undertake the trials. And so we're going to invest in money into actually conducting trials for Canadian biotechnology and hopefully advance that, improve health, and also grow our economy at the same time.
Can we talk a little bit about that access? Because you said that in your speech.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter whether you're in downtown Toronto versus
Calloway.
But there is quite a disparity in access as it stands right now.
Yeah, so there is a huge disparity in access to be part of clinical trials. And again, it's up to individuals if they want to be part of trials, but it is very unfortunate that some people don't have access to participate in trials that may be very relevant to their health. And one of the challenges that exists is that a lot of times when trials start in Canada, especially in the non-big medical school type hospitals, that a lot of times they don't have study personnel in the other types of hospitals in smaller communities. And this actually then you're trying to convince a colleague to, hire someone, and that takes, a long time, and start the trial, and we want to make much more efficient processes. This is one of the key things that allowed the United Kingdom to just excel so much during the COVID pandemic, because their government had invested, over 15 years ago in creating a system where they basically paid to embed study personnel in all the hospitals across the United Kingdom. And so when COVID started, they had study personnel in the hospitals ready to go, knew the system, could start recruiting patients right away. And it, again, gave access to people across the country, not simply in big academic hospitals that come from big, typically Canadian cities. We need to ensure that we expand that. So we're going to try to learn from that experience, and we're going to embed study personnel in many hospitals geographically located across the country that are not our big, university settings, that are more rural type settings of hospitals.
Canada presents quite the challenge in that respect.
It does, but we still, though, in Canada, even when we're in smaller areas, there still is regionalization, so people may travel still a fair distance to get to those hospitals, but at least it will give them a chance, if there's something there, that they can still access clinical trials and be part of things that they want to be part of that may improve their health.
Can we talk about what exactly clinical trials are and why they are so integral to them?
Yeah, so clinical trials, when people use that term, they're referring to randomized control trials. So randomized control trials are a trial where we randomize patients, like the flipping of a coin, to get an experimental intervention or a control intervention. Controls often can be placebos. That is by far and away our gold standard of how we figure out what really works. And importantly, people may not realize this in society, but most of the big advances that have really dramatically improved healthcare have come from evaluation in randomized control trials. And that is our gold standard. And they are crucial to advancing health. And we need to find ways to make them much more efficient and much more available for all people who want to be able to participate.
What are the pain points in the system overall right now that ACT can help to address?
Yeah, so areas right now that slow down clinical trials include needing to get a lot of ethics approvals in centers all over the country. It doesn't make sense. It wastes a lot of time. It wastes a lot of money. If we have big international studies that we're leading in Canada that are funded by something like the Canadian Institute of Health Research, it's not credible that a small hospital somewhere in the country is going to pick up some fatal flaw that everyone else has missed, and we are just wasting time with these processes. And also, too, economically, Canada loses out in a big way by having a structure where we don't have a single ethics approval for the entire country. And what I mean by that is, industry, when they're looking to actually go to countries to conduct studies, they look at the efficiency of the country. And in countries where, in fact, there's not efficient systems, they often either pass them by or restrict how many patients can participate in those countries. So it's also not collectively in our own interest, even economically, not to actually make more efficient systems. And we need to get to a process where we can have ideally a single ethics approval so that if you're approved in Quebec, that should also be good enough in Ontario or Nova Scotia or vice versa. So that's one major issue. Another major issue is the time spent in terms of contracts. We've just made them way too complicated and they're problematic. We're looking at putting in a system where we create master clinical trial agreements between the clinical trial units and all of the participating sites that will hopefully be a way to expedite contract processes much faster so that you'll only deal with very specific things about the trial as opposed to just background agreements that can happen on a whole lot of fronts. So that's one way we're going to try to address that. Another issue that exists and is a limitation for Canadian trialists, we want to, and we encourage people to undertake international trials. We want to definitely improve health in Canada, but we're also a country where we have an international outlook. We would like to advance health, and that would be a great contribution for Canada to be making to improve health globally. A barrier that has existed to that is that the cost of insurance to conduct trials in other parts of the world is actually very expensive. We've come up with a process of a captive insurance program where in fact we can drive down the cost of that enormously to help make it much more feasible to conduct international trials. There's many other regulatory issues in that, but those are some of the big things that need to be addressed just to make trials much more efficient in Canada.
What is McMaster's role in the consortium?
So McMaster is the lead site for the consortium, so the Population Health Research Institute, which is a research institute both at McMaster University and the Hamilton Health Sciences, is the lead site. It is the coordinating site for this. I was the nominated principal applicant of the overall consortium, and obviously I'm at McMaster. So McMaster plays a very key role, but I do want to emphasize this is a pan-Canadian consortium, and we are very fortunate to have people from entirely across the country and institutions across the country playing a very key role in this. But McMaster is the lead of the actual initiative.
I'd like to touch on the analogy that you made between the sprinting and the marathon, and how you see this funding and ACT helping creating that.
Yeah. So the image I was trying to create is just that we should be proud as Canadians that remarkably we punch well above our weight class in terms of doing high impact, high quality clinical trials that change care globally. However, the truth is we've more function as long distance runners, in that we've really achieved that through perseverance as opposed to the structure of the system facilitated it. When COVID happened, we then needed to be able to sprint. And the problem is those bottlenecks that existed in the system that slowed down trials all of a sudden made it so that we weren't able to be effective. And so despite having world-leading clinical trialists, Canada wasn't a world leader when it came to the research that changed the way everyone managed COVID disease. We lagged way behind. It was countries like the United Kingdom, the United States, Brazil. And so part of what we have to be willing to do is look at those countries and say, okay, so the analogy that I was conveying was that Canadian trials really function much more like long distance running. We've been enormously successful, but we've been successful because of perseverance, as opposed to the structural issues that exist in conducting trials in Canada. So we should be proud of the impact that Canadian trials have had in improving global health. It is really remarkable for such a small country, the impact we've had. But again, it really came from perseverance and not structural issues that facilitated trials happening well. When COVID-19 happened, you needed a system that actually could be a sprinting. You need to be able to sprint to get things done really efficiently and fast because the world was dependent on it because people were dying fast and we needed answers of how we were going to actually turn that around. Unfortunately, Canada's, the bottlenecks that exist in our structure systems that are put in place for clinical trials impeded that. And the reality was the world leaders, then it came to COVID, were first the United Kingdom, the United States, and Brazil. And as a country and as a professional group that do trials, we have to be willing to look to say, look, we should celebrate what we're great at, but we should not ignore what in fact are our limitations. And we should learn from the people who have actually been able to perform also as sprinters. And so, we need to learn from what happened in the UK. And as I said, one of the big things that facilitated the UK being so fast was that they had created this system where they had embedded study personnel in hospitals all over the country, not simply big academic medical schools. That also goes to the democratization of trials. More people in the UK have access to participate in that. But also, when they want an answer fast, they're able to do it so much faster because everyone is already set up to go. They're not having to look to try to convince someone to participate in the trial. Then they have to go hire study personnel. And so we're going to learn from that, and we're going to try to copy that process they used to ensure that we can, in fact, get the same kind of results in Canada.
And I guess within that democratization, there would be underrepresented groups.
Yeah, so for sure that, one obvious group is Indigenous populations. So they have been enormously, left behind when it comes to overall health and also access to participate in trials. It's also important to acknowledge, I think that the process that we were using, that was feedback we received in, having lots of conversations with Indigenous people when we were setting up this grant, is that their priority wasn't necessarily to participate in every trial that was being developed for every condition that was confronting everyone or groups within Canada. And I think part of what we have to do, as opposed to saying, we really want to make sure that there's Indigenous people in every trial that happens, we first really have to look, and this is what ACT is going to do, what are their health priorities? Explicitly find out within the three Indigenous populations, Métis, Inuit, and First Nations, what are their health priorities? Then work to determine what are credible interventions that we can actually study in trials within their communities that would then be relevant to their populations. And so that's what we're going to fund in this study, and it's going to be led by Indigenous researchers. And we really hope by turning it around to focus on their priorities and having their people run the studies and have it done within their communities, it'll be evidence that's much more directly relevant to them, and they will hopefully be able to benefit a lot more from clinical trials happening in Canada.
Maybe I'll just end by, if you wanted to reflect on the impact of this funding today, what it might have on the general population, Canadians, your parents living in Cape Breton, what it might have.
Yeah, so the first thing is to thank the government. I'm glad people recognize that we had some systemic problems and it's time to address those, and I congratulate the government for investing in this. It certainly is a big investment. Again, the ACT consortium is putting in place many structural issues that we are going to work hard at to ensure that more people in Canada have access to participate in trials, but also that we address the bottlenecks that exist in the system to try to streamline those processes so we can do trials more efficiently, faster. If we have another pandemic, we won't be dependent on other countries to find the answers for us. And finally, we also want to help build our Canadian biotechnology. We're going to invest money directly in studying Canadian biotechnology with the hope that some of those products of Canadian biotech will actually be successful, will grow, those companies will grow, those people will invest more money in research, and again, we will just help prosper everyone as a society.